Tell us about WebRecon's origin story and give us a brief history of the company.
I started it in 2009 as the economy was crashing all around us. The real story goes back a bit further, though. In a previous lifetime, I'd worked in the movie theater industry and I spent 16 years there, ended up building a business of my own that used movie theater data like showtimes and movie information to build a tool that would help movie theaters all over the country communicate better with their consumers. And that was my first experience with data, online data tools, and that was a good one. It was a good business. I sold that in 2004, I believe, and was started looking for my next project, and that got me into the collection space. I looked and looked, and there were just no interesting businesses around here to be had. Right, I had a little money in my pocket, and I was looking for something to do, and all I could find were restaurants and multi-level marketing scams. And then an acquaintance brought this one to me. It was a collection agency, and I was intrigued. And I acquired it, my own little acquisition. That was a nightmare. Running it was a nightmare. Selling it, 5 years later was a nightmare. There's very little good that came out of that, except for the one big silver lining, which was in my last year or two of running that agency, consumer litigation exploded. I got hit with it 3 times in 2008. And my takeaway once I got out from under that disaster was that here's a new problem, right? A new problem that is affecting a lot of companies out there. And I thought maybe with my experience developing this database-driven software product in the past, that I could build something that could help to address this new problem. And I was kind of forced into it because, again, the economy was crashing. We were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month around the country. And I didn't really have any other ideas. I didn't have a plan B. There were no jobs to be had. So I moved into this, and it gained traction really quickly. And I've had this extreme honor now for the last 16 years of organically growing this business to the point where it became its own acquisition target.
How did you discover Jonas?
When I kind of had that epiphany that, you know what, I've been thinking about this for the last 5 years. I even had some exploratory conversations with some potential acquirers and a broker, but it never really felt right. Now it feels right. This is a time. And that would have been like March of 23. I got 3 offers from those companies, and the Jonas one kind of made the most sense. So the other 2 offers that came in were from companies that were actually within my industry. And, I knew them. And that sort of gave them a natural edge, at the beginning, because I knew they really understood what I do. And I think between, what the service we provide and the service they provide, that would be a good selling point. But once we started really digging into the offers, so all 3 of the offers effectively valued the company at the same number. But the other 2 companies had much more complicated formulas. Jonas had a much simpler formula. So that was compelling. And we started talking to the Jonas team, and they clearly, sort of really knew what they were doing. And, we had a weekly call. It quickly became clear that Jonas was now the favorite. And so we had weekly calls just to kind of, touch base, go over due diligence, ask questions, Q&A on both sides. And, that was sort of the obvious play that, after a little bit of contemplation on all of the offers, Jonas was the one.
At Jonas, we often talk about our ABCs model. Based on your experience with us, how have you seen the model in action?
We have made friends across the portfolio, and really sort of enjoy having this larger community. We haven't taken a tremendous amount of advantage over that yet, although we are starting. Right, we're actually just yesterday we had a meeting with the AI department, Maria. That we're starting. We're accepting help to help us craft some AI enhancements to our service. Right, I mean that's nice, right? Because she can get us meetings, right, with the source of the AI solutions, and really help direct us, guide us through that process. So it's been overall, I think it's been a really good fit for us. And the culture, listen, it's a good culture.
What was WebRecon's experience with Jonas post acquisition?
Yeah, well, listen, I'll give full credit to Terry again, our GM. She is just so competent and detail oriented that she really took on the brunt of that actual acquisition process and helped make it all smooth. God, if that was left in my hands, I'm sure it would have been a nightmare. But so she really managed that integration process just fabulously, and the experience was, I'll say, organized, orderly, a little bit painful in places, but not overly so. And on the other side of it, everybody, the whole team got a raise, which was great. The structure, the organizational structure of the company changed quite a bit. Again, with my new role and Terry's new role. We're a small company. We had 5 W2 employees, including me, pre-acquisition. We have 4 now, 1 left just before the acquisition closed, and then we have a handful of contractors around the world. Right, so we're a small company, 10-ish people that keep the whole operation running. We took one of our most important contractors and made him an employee, right, and gave him a nice raise as well, right. And so everybody was sort of welcomed into the new organization. The just sort of that whole transition process, I think, was handled with the appropriate amount of respect and again, just competence. So going forward from that acquisition point, it's just been again we appreciate the extra resources that we have. We love working with Dennis. He's been a great leader for the new day here, and I think I don't really have anything constructive in a negative sense to say about it. But I again, it just points to the competence of the Jonas team here that they're able to, as many acquisitions as they do, they're able to give each one the attention they need to make it as smooth as it can be.
Definitely. That's great to hear. It's great to hear. It's been a smooth post-acquisition process and an integration process. So last question here, Jack. What advice would you give to owners looking to sell their business?
I really struggle with that one because for me, it was such a personal thing. As I said earlier, I was struggling with the idea for a good 5 years before, I finally had my moment of clarity that, now was the time. By the way, from that moment of clarity to acquisition was only about 6 months, right? I mean, it went fairly quickly. I think if again, there was this problem that I didn't plan this thing. Had I known I was going to stay on, I would have handled the negotiations a little bit differently. So one piece of advice I would give is clean up your EBITDA. I like traveling, right? I did more travel than I could justify. Right. So I could have cleaned that up and then been, paid for it at a multiple. That's a big one. And then just, make your peace.